USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. And just to let the readership or the listenership know, in partnership with USA EBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change, rising seas, increasing earthquakes and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Wherever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens. The Zetas are remarkably accurate, but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit zetatalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. And by the way, tonight we're going to be talking about a couple of issues. Nemesis, which was announced as discovered, and what the Zetas had to say about this 20 years ago as an example of their remarkable accuracy. Also, questions from the chat and issues raised in the chat will be addressed toward the end of the hour after the main feature has been presented. Today we're going to talk about, as I said, a couple of planetary bodies that have been discussed in Zeta Talk 20 years ago at the start of the Zeta Talk saga. One is Nemesis and the other is the dark twin of the Earth, which is on the opposite side of the sun, and how that can be that we never see it, but somehow the ancient Greeks knew about it, etc. Very fascinating. We want to wrap in also Flint, Michigan's problems with clean water. There's a nexus here, because if we're going to have cataclysms in our future, as have been predicted by the Zetas, clean water is a must. There's no reason why you can't have clean, pure drinking water, and we're going to tell you how to get it. So first, briefly, and by the way, there's a lot to be discussed with Flint, and Andre is ready to trot here, with all kinds of news articles and information. And we agreed that we would introduce Flint, and then I would do the planetary bodies, and then we would go back to Flint, with all the information and what can go wrong if your water is bad and blah, blah, blah. Okay, what does heavy lead water in Flint, Michigan have to do with the recent admission called Planet 9 in the news and Earth 2.0 also in the news? The Nexus is a pending catastrophe that will require everyone to worry about the purity of their water. Per Time magazine, here's what happened in Flint to give them gunky brown-yellow water from the tap. And I quote Time magazine. Flint switched from Detroit's water supply to the Flint River in 2014, in part to save money, but the city did not use corrosive control to prevent lead from entering the water. The river itself was also found to contain 8 times more chloride than Detroit's water, a chemical that is highly corrosive to metals. Most residents in Flint have decade-old lead service lines that connect their homes to the city's main water pipes. When water from the river flowed through those pipes, it ate away at their insides, allowing lead to enter the supply. Now, safe water was discussed in September 7th here on situational preparedness, and I encourage everyone to listen again to this broadcast, which is also on the Zeta Report YouTube channel. Bottom line, distilling your drinking water gets rid of not only germs and parasites, but also heavy metals and pollutants. Germs and parasites are killed by the heat of boiling. Heavy metals remain in the base water being boiled and do not carry forward in the steam. And pollutants such as petrol, spilled gasoline, boil away and evaporate, and you're left with good drinking water. The Flint crisis, where water from the Flint River was used for drinking and cooking water, has been belatedly discovered to be lead heavy. Meanwhile, the damage from lead poisoning has diminished the IQs of children and damaged the brains of all. Lead can be removed from the body by chelation, or a diet high in vitamin C, iron, and calcium, but this does not repair the brain and nerves, thus permanent damage. So now, I think that Andre, you wanted to jump in with a statement or two on chelation.
Well, it's a big word to mean basically detoxify. Chelation is just pulling of heavy metals out of softer tissues and eliminating them from a system. And you can do that in your body a couple of different ways with foods, and you can also do that with different cleansing supplies that you can find at a natural food store. But we're going to look at stuff that you can do without those everyday amenities. You're going to have to do it yourself. So cilantro is a good one, or coriander seed, which is the seed of cilantro, used in a lot of Latin American cooking and also in a lot of Eastern and Indian cuisine. Will pull out mercury, aluminum, and lead from the body. Parsley does a little bit of that and also helps with detoxifying enzymes. Broccoli, kale, and cabbage are also other options too. So these are a lot of
standard garden. I was
in your
gonna
garden
say,
that
right
you can
from
grow.
Garden. Oh yeah,
right, and they're easy to grow too. So cabbage especially. So I just wanted to throw that in there. And that's from naturalnews.com, and you can find that heavy metal detoxify basically.
Yeah. Yeah, you do not need, and why not have that as part of your regular diet? Kale, parsley, and cilantro. Another nice thing about cilantro is that it's antibacterial. That's why they mix it in with the salsas and the like, because it kills bacteria and helps it stay clean. Yes. So look into that, folks, and get a book. I always say get a book, print off some of this information. Get these things into your garden. Heavy metals such as lead can result from volcanic dust leaching into the groundwater or fractured rock, allowing lead-heavy magma to sneak up and mingle with groundwater. Now, this is in the opinion of the Zetas, who tell us that when we have big earthquakes, and they're picking up all the time, that you have rock fracturing and the magma kind of travels up, baffles up and affects the groundwater, and then the rain will wash the lead back down until it's deep, deep down and clean things up a bit. It's not that it necessarily drops down on you from volcanic ash. It can sneak up from below if the rock has been shaken up, jerked around, fractured. Thus, well water and river and lake water and surface water, such as ponds, should all be suspect. Comes from below, drops down on you in the rainwater if there's volcanic dust. Distill that water and then drink and cook with it. So moving on now to these planetary bodies. Also in the news is a newly discovered planet called Planet 9, yet another name for this guy. I mean, they keep assigning names because in the past it was called Nemesis, and I'll tell you why. That this object was out in space in the direction of Orion was known for a long time by the ancient astronomers because the outer planets all kind of pulled in that direction, what astronomers call a perturbation. In modern times, astronomers have noted that long-period comets come from and return in that direction. Something's pulling, a gravity source. What is being called Planet 9 in the recent news articles was located because of these perturbations, which centered in the same spot. They said, well, they all kind of like zip out of and go back and lean in there and, what's the attraction over there? And then they went and take a look, and they found and they haven't actually taken any pictures, but they have determined that they have enough info that they can say there's a gravity body out there, let's call it Planet 9. And I'm quoting from the January 20th of this year PBS article. Astronomers at the California Institute of Technology announced they'd found evidence for a massive faraway planet. If true, it would constitute the 9th planet in our solar system, an honor once bestowed on Pluto, which has since been demoted to dwarf planet status. They've nicknamed the new object Planet 9. Planet 9's mass is believed to be about 10 times that of Earth, and its distance 20 times further from the Sun, 20 times further from the Sun than Pluto. Evidence of its existence comes instead from dwarf planets and other icy objects around it. All right, so they natter on about this 20 times further away than from the Sun than Pluto, 20 Sun-Pluto. And the reason this is important is because of a Zeta Talk statement 20 years ago when they went into detail about how we have our Sun has a binary, but it's not a lit binary, and that twin and our Sun are not in some kind of a dance where we're so close to each other that you can't miss it, and we're in a static dance, I would have to say, and guess what? The Zetas said that that dark binary twin, the same size of our Sun but just never lit, is 18.74 Sun-Pluto distances. Well, what's all this with Planet 9 being 20 Sun-Pluto distances? They are not talking about Nibiru, which is a planet that orbits that twin and our Sun back and forth in a kind of a sling orbit. This is not Nibiru. This is Nemesis. In the early 1980s, the hunt was on for what was called Nemesis, the gravity giant causing these perturbations. Nemesis was the name assigned to this gravity giant, as there seemed to be a 26,000-year period for great cataclysms here on Earth. It was suspected that Nemesis had an orbit that brought it through our solar system every 26,000 years. Most suns are part of a binary system, so likely our Sun was too. So that's where it got the name Nemesis. You know, like, oh, the destroyer. But there was a lot of confusion here with Nibiru, which comes through every 3,600 years per all the geological evidence. You know, like, well, I could rattle that off. I think we've had an hour here, you know, on USA EBN where we detailed all of that. You go back 3,600 years, we had the Jewish Exodus. You know, you jump back 3 times, it was the flood, and all of this can be measured in geological and in mythology. And you know, so anyway, Nemesis is the binary twin out there. Nibiru is the planet that is several times greater in mass than the Earth. It's supposed to be 4 to 5 times the diameter of Earth, you know, not just according to the Zetas, but also according to Harrington, who was a Navy astronomer who was killed because he wanted to tell the public about this, but also 23 times the mass of Earth, according to the Zetas. So it is a big bugger, and it's a big magnet, and it causes pole shifts and crustal shifts when it passes close to us, because of we're magnetic too, and because it's a gravity draw. Okay, as is well known because of a Washington Post front page article in 1983, JPL found an object in the direction of Orion, and they went up and took a look at it. You know, they sent an infrared balloon up above the atmosphere, looking in that direction toward Orion. And when they found something out there, infrared, you know, where they anticipated they would, they got all in a panic and allowed this article to be posted, and then quickly went back and slammed the cover down, and there was a cover-up. They were fearing panic, you know, and you can sense the fear of panic in the Washington Post article. Let me just read a couple of paragraphs from that. A heavenly body possibly as large as the giant planet Jupiter, and possibly so close to Earth that it would be part of the solar system, has been found in the direction of the constellation Orion by an orbiting telescope aboard the U.S. Infrared Astronomical Satellite. So mysterious is the object that astronomers do not know if it is a planet, a giant comet, a nearby protostar that never got hot enough to become a star, a distant galaxy so young that it is still in the process of forming its first stars, or a galaxy so shrouded in dust that none of the light cast by its stars ever gets through. The most fascinating explanation of this mystery body, which is so cold it casts no light and has never been seen by optical telescopes on Earth or in space, is that it is a giant gaseous planet, as large as Jupiter and as close to Earth as 500 billion miles. While that may not seem like a great distance in earthbound terms, it is a stone's throw in cosmological terms. So close, in fact, that it would be the nearest heavenly body to Earth beyond the outermost planet, Pluto. Now, that's the end of the quote. Now, you'll notice that they're saying, oh, it could be far away, it could be close, but, if it's far away or if it's close, it's really cool, but if it's far away, it could be. And they're hemming and hawing. They may not really know at this point in time. But the article goes on to say, but it's not inbound. Let me put a damper on that. Well, if they don't know what it is, how can they say it's not inbound? You can sense the panic, and of course there was mass confusion because what they had actually cited was not Nemesis out there 20 Sun-Pluto distances out. It was Nibiru, which was coming in, going in its sling orbit from the dark twin to our sun, and was sort of halfway there. So they had cited Nibiru, and Nibiru gives off a dim light. It has a smoldering. It's a brown dwarf, which means that it's not going to light up like a sun, but it does produce heat and light from its core. And it's with us. It came into the solar system in 2003. I saw it. People are photographing it like crazy all the time. It shows up on Soho, etc. There's no secret about this. And people say, why are we seeing two suns rise or set at times? And if you use certain filters, boy, do you see the stuff around the sun. And you can see Nibiru, and increasingly visible. And boy, on the internet, but they're not willing to say it's in the solar system, causing all our weird weather, causing the globe to wobble a bit. It's a planet. That's not Nemesis, and it's hard to keep that all sorted out, especially when you have these articles that create all the confusion. So why all this confusion? They're both out there toward Orion, and they're both being suspected of being a perturbing gravity draw. Well, Zeta talked to the rescue. In the opinion of the Zetas, there are two objects. One is a dark static unlit star, a binary to our sun, and the second is Nibiru, a traveling planet that orbits both suns. In 1983, Nibiru was returning from the dark binary twin of the sun and preparing to pass through our solar system. The Zetas described the dark binary twin of the sun as being, as I said, 18.74 Sun-Pluto distances away. And the fact that news articles on the discovery of what they are now calling Planet 9 stated this planet was 20 Sun-Pluto distances away. Once again, this demonstrates the remarkable accuracy of Zeta talk, and the newly discovered Planet 9 is thus Nemesis. Now, there are those sometimes that say, well, maybe Nancy's just sort of, she's a plant from the government.
Right.
She knows all this stuff, and it's not Zeta talk at all. I am here to tell you, I don't talk to the government. I got this from my pals, the Zetas, and they said 18.74, and I drew that little diagram in the science section of Zeta talk, so there you are, from the mouths of the Zetas. But lest
I want to
any
add to that too.
Yeah,
can I just say
sure,
something
absolutely.
just for as far as USA EBN is concerned, I can say that for myself personally, and not speaking for the network's not governmental based. We're an NGO, so we're not government. But I will say that it took a while for me to convince Nancy to come on the show, because a lot of people that want to hear or use Zeta Talk or bullshift.ning.com, which is a sister site to Zeta Talk, who want to use that information, a lot of times want to use it for their own purposes and put their own spin on it, or sell a book or sell a video or subscribers or whatever. We don't do that. We just want to get the preparedness information out there, and we teamed up with Nancy, was nice enough to team up with us here at USA EBN to put out preparedness information and also information in the opinions of the Zetas and to track some of the Earth changes. And we've done almost just over a year now, Nancy. And I can say from my personal experience that Nancy's not a governmental plant. She grows plants in her garden. I haven't seen them, but right. I hear about them. But she's not. No. So we're just putting the information out, and we expect people to have questions and follow up too. So, and do your own research.
Thank you for that confirmation.
Yeah.
But lest there be any confusion, this Planet 9, aka Nemesis, aka the dark unlit binary twin of the Sun, is not the threat. It may be a gravity pull, it may be causing perturbations in the outer planets, but it is not what has arrived in 2003 per many observations and about to cause cataclysmic change here on Earth. That is Nibiru. Nibiru is with us now in the inner solar system, as many photographers around the world using special filters for colors in the red spectrum show. Nibiru travels with an entourage of moons and a vast cloud of red dust and debris. And let me tell you, I have seen this. I saw it when it arrived. They said it was going to arrive in the spring of 2003, around late March. I was coming home from a business meeting and went out into a cornfield where there was no light pollution, and I saw, this messy red stuff, and it was to the right of Orion, and it was not that red star, which I forget the name. There's a name for it, but it is a red, but it wasn't that one. It was, could be seen also. And people from around the world saw this and were commenting because it was still in the night sky. Then it moved across Earth's orbit and got closer to the sun. I've also seen it at other times causing two shadows, on my veranda, where the sun would be covered by a cloud, but there would be another light source causing a different shadow, and the like. And you can put up a filter, the insert of a floppy disk, which is red, and that will allow more red spectrum light to come through. Mylar does a very good job with that also. I actually prefer the Mylar filter. It's not a colored red piece of plastic. This is Mylar and the insert from a floppy allow more red spectrum light to come through because this is red charged iron oxide dust in the red spectrum, and if you filter everything else out, you can see this Nibiru complex. These moon swirls are like shoulder pads on either side, and when it came in the night sky in 2003, the early photographers would show this. It was called a double helix, and now in the recent photos, as it's getting closer, are showing this same shoulder pad kind of persona. And there's some webcams in Italy and France now also that just because of the clarity of their skies, no cloud cover, every night around 5 to 7 o'clock as the sun goes down, you can see a red object, and when you zoom in on it, there it is with the shoulder pads, etc. And people, I mean, it's just a flood of people saying, there it is, look what I caught. Now, a lot of times they're not catching Nibiru. They're catching instead what we call the moon swirls, which are, as the Zetas explained, instead of moons going around and around like we have in our solar system, our planets go round and around the sun, and the moons go round and around a planet. Instead, because this guy travels from one sun to the dark binary twin, turn around, come back, and go past our sun, turn around, go back, it has a sling orbit, or what you might want to call a very extended oval orbit, if you want to. And therefore, the moons never do get into the round and round. They're always dragging behind, drawn along by the gravity pull, and they get into a twirl with each other, and then they attract all this charged dust. So they actually form long tubes. And if you see those tubes from the end, which frequently happens, the light of the sun goes bouncing down those tubes and comes out kind of like focused, like a flashlight, and they're extremely bright. That's not Nibiru. They can be, to the left of the sun, up around to the top of the sun. Nibiru tends to be in the northern hemisphere at about the 4 o'clock position to the sun. Okay. So now I've kind of digressed a little. The last such passage of Nibiru was indeed 3,600 years ago, during the time of the Jewish Exodus, when the Egyptians were so discombobulated by the chaos that their Jewish slaves escaped and the Red Sea parted. And the Zetas say on this, these were old women, children, cripples. They just walked away. And how did that happen? So it was clear that something, and the Egyptian, they used to take the census, and they were so well organized, and what happened to them? They just all went to pieces. They stopped keeping records at that time, So, and the Bible, the Book of Exodus, documents it, and many of the Egyptian historical records document the same occurrence. Okay. Where the establishment has not yet admitted that a planet called Nibiru exists, and they are creeping closer with admissions. In the opinion of the Zetas and in the observation of people all over the globe, Nibiru and its cloud of red dust and moon swirls is near the sun, visible daily, in fact, of late, following its arrival into the inner solar system in 2003. In 2003, when Nibiru was still visible in the night sky, its shape and entourage could be seen. Then it moved closer to the sun and is now seen close to the sun as it continues on its passage through the solar system. And it's showing up on SOHO, the government photos, too, of the sun. As the pole shifting has a very active collection of these SOHO observations, interferes with our magnetosphere also. And that's the guy that's interfering with our... It's not the sun. The sun is very sleepy. All right. I'm digressing again. Nibiru, the name assigned by the ancient Sumerians, is known by many names. Marduk, Wormwood, the Great Destroyer, the Red Star, and in modern times as Planet X. The ancients reported that it came from the direction of Orion and had a retrograde orbit. Well, that's the direction where Nemesis is, and that's why it comes from that direction. This is not the Planet 9 recent discovery in the news. This seems to be a type of creeping disclosure, where the binary twin of the sun is first admitted, then Nibiru as a traveling planet orbiting both suns will be admitted. It's kind of backwards, but maybe not. If you admit Nibiru, you're going to be too discombobulated to think about Nemesis. So maybe they're introducing the bigger picture. Okay, you got that, dark binary twin, and now the sun, and now we got something that's closer. Okay, the symbol for Nibiru was a winged globe, as it has a double helix appearance with dominant moon swirls on either sides like shoulder pads. Now, this was fascinating to me because the ancient Sumerians and Egyptians would show this. Here's a round circle, that's the globe, and these huge wings on either side, right? Well, and that's the way it looks. When it was first captured on SOHO in 2009, it was in and out because they're airbrushing this out as best they can. There it was. It looked exactly like the winged globe in the ancient Sumerians. And boy, did we grab that quick before they could get rid of it. That's on my website, and it will be in the YouTube Zeta report of this hour conversation. Okay, another recent article on Earth 2.0, which I found fascinating because that's another rumored planetary body, which apparently the ancients knew about, just as they knew about Nemesis. They knew the perturbations. They knew the outer planets were pulling and the like, just as we do. Not so dumb. You have to wonder where they got all this information from. If they were so dumb as to think that the Earth was flat, then how could they know about planets out toward Orion and the Earth's twin on the other side of the sun? But here we have an article coming out about Earth 2.0, and this article cites a 1968 Corden Committee study by the Air Force that speculates that the Earth too might have a twin, just as the sun has a binary, but the Earth's twin is dark, unlit, and normally resides on the other side of the sun from the Earth. In the opinion of the Zetas, this long-rumored twin of Earth is true. The ancients called this a counter-Earth, and even at a time when the flat Earth theory was dominant, they seemed to be aware of this never-seen Earth twin on the other side of the sun. How is this possible? Well, the only thing I can think of is that the aliens told them they were contactees. Who knows? Maybe they got bundled into a spaceship and got a ride and they said, see? We don't know. But I think it's amazing if you can never see it. Do you know, I went to Museum of Science and Industry with my kids in Chicago years ago, and they have this experiment where you let two marbles go, one after the other, and they go round and around this track, and then they finally end up in the center in a gravity sink, right? Pretty soon, on about the second or third circle on its way down, the marbles have separated and they are on opposite sides of that gravity sink in the middle. And they just seem to want to be on opposite sides of each other. I'm not sure what the physics of that are, but it's something like that these two bodies sharing the same orbit, approximate the same size and mass, prefer to be exactly opposite each other than close to each other. And that's what happens. Oddly, many science fiction movies, TV series, and books have been based on this Earth twin concept, including The Adventures of Superman, where the planet Krypton is said to be situated on the other side of the sun from the Earth, and Doppelganger, a film where the counter-Earth is identical to Earth in every respect, except that left and right are reversed. This was marketed in the U.S. as a movie titled Journey to the Far Side of the Sun. So, it's in the conscious mind or the subconscious mind. Again, I suggest that a lot of times aliens, these authors or whatever, are contactees, and they get a ride in a spaceship, and there you go. Now, why is this important? Because the Earth's orbit has been discombobulated by Nibiru. Nibiru came in, crossed our orbit, and is passing by the sun and then going back out. It doesn't collide with the sun, and it won't collide with us. This is not a collision. But by crossing our orbit, and it interfered with our orbit, and therefore we're not exactly opposite the dark twin, Earth 2.0. And therefore, it's coming up behind us in our shared orbit, and people see this, and they take pictures of it, photographs of it, and they don't know what it is. I'm getting into that here. The dark twin of Earth, per the Zetas, is so black that it absorbs almost all light, only emitting some blue and yellow light. Due to the disruption of the Earth's orbit caused by Nibiru in the inner solar system, this has become visible and has been captured on photos from around the world, hitting the news recently in California and Italy in 2015. Oh, yeah. I do. There were news articles. And it's not just that people have seen this. In 2004, they saw this coming around because sunlight went away from the sun, hit this black planet, and bounced directly back toward us. And boy, did they see it. Now that it's a little closer to us, the angle isn't so good, and therefore you don't. It's not so dramatic. But in 2004, early 2004. It was dramatic, and I got to read you. People were reporting this to me and to my website in droves from all over the world. New York City. Quote, I know that it was at least 3 times bigger than Venus has ever appeared, possibly more. Obviously, it was bigger than a normal star because I thought it was a light on a building. And the color also, that yellow, was flaming yellow. Then 2 minutes later, blue. The map I pulled up for New York City shows that Venus is not visible at that time. I know it wasn't Venus, but that's about it. Why? Well, for one thing, Mars and other objects were right next to Venus, and the object I saw was off by itself, just sort of hanging there. I was walking toward the west in New York City, and the west side. New York City is skewed in terms of true direction, going according to actual directions by using where the sun sets. I was walking northwest. And then Australia, Sydney, Australia. I see it every day, slightly west-northwest. It's extremely bright as the sun sets, then reduces in magnitude to about the brightness of Sirius. It does actually change color from yellow to blue, and then disappears below the horizon about 9 p.m. The Netherlands. In the Netherlands, it's also visible for quite a while now. First, I thought it was just Venus, but I have the feeling it gained in brightness over the week. Also, its color has turned from white to more yellow, I believe. Last night, I was outside at approximately 1 in the morning, and it was still visible, and I don't believe that Venus would be visible that late. There was a light haze, so I could only see this in the west-northwest, and the 2 brightest stars from Orion in the west-southwest. And well, I didn't do all the quotes because it would go on and on, but the Zetas, in the opinion of the Zetas, they said this black hunk of rock absorbs all light, except it will reflect some light in the blue spectrum and some light in the yellow spectrum. And that's why these people were describing yellow and blue. And the pictures that are being taken lately, ever since 2004, every now and then, just after dusk, when the camera is pointing in that direction, behind us in our shared orbit, they'll catch an object that will be fuzzy, kind of greenish. Well, green is blue and yellow together, and it's there. So it may loom large due to the discombobulation in all these orbits that Nibiru creates. We have been warned by the Zetas that we may see the dark twin. In fact, it shows up in legends. In India, it's a god known as Kali, who is, coincidentally, almost black, but bluish black. And she's one of the wives of Krishna, who is supposed to be Nibiru in Hindu mythology. So, yes, the ancients knew about it, saw about it, recorded it, when in past passages as these mythological gods. So if you're hearing about Nemesis and the possibility of an Earth twin, then it's a good bet that we will soon be hearing about Nibiru. After all, people are seeing it daily via webcams at dusk, naked eye visibility, no filters required, with its double helix in full display. And folks, that's the end of my lecture tonight. I know that Andre has collected quite a bit of information on the Flint water crisis, and he's itching to share that with us. Have at it.
I've got a rash.
My friend.
I've got a rash.
Yeah.
I've been using the water.
Oh.
Nancy, thank you very much for that, the review and all the history behind Nemesis and the dark twin. I know it's hard to put a handle visually in folks' minds out there of what's actually going on with our solar system when most of the establishment and the media keeps naming it different objects and calling it different things. And I think that's part of the problem here is we've been dealing with disinformation and misinformation for quite some time. And it's hard to cut through all of that. And you've done a great job with making it understandable. I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
I did also find the Washington Post article is in their archives online. I don't know if I know it was not able to search on the Google machine to get the actual Washington Post article from 1983, but I found that. I put it on the chat room, and I'll forward it to you later. I don't know. Some things are just showing up out of nowhere, which is good to hear sometimes, and sometimes not so good to hear.
Yeah.
As far as Flint goes, the reason why we wanted to talk about Flint's water crisis on the show today, in conjunction with what's going on in the news, is because this could happen anywhere. And if there are more cataclysms, sinkholes, earthquakes, acid rain, or any kind of pollution that gets into our water supply, this is something that we're going to have to deal with personally in our own lives, without the help of, government agencies or other filtration or magical devices that take all the chemicals and pollutants out of water. You need to know how to do this on your own, find a clean source of water, how to distill water yourself, or to filter it properly. But want to flesh out a little bit what's happening in Flint, Michigan. I know it did hit the news a little bit nationwide. I guess it would be 3-4 weeks ago. I know if you're not living in the area, it's probably not a big deal to you. If you're not watching the news in Michigan, maybe you've heard about it. But what happened in Flint, Michigan, what happened in a lot of municipalities around the United States, but in Michigan in particular, is a lot of these counties and councils and municipalities have been turned over to emergency managers, which means that the mayor and the city council basically don't have the power that they used to, and this emergency manager would help with saving money, getting city put back together, bankruptcy, that sort of thing. And Flint had been hard hit by the crises of the economy, plus also being an automobile production area. But anyway, Flint's water supply, the city council in March 2013 voted to switch their water supply from the Detroit Water and Sewer Department to the new $233 million Lake Huron-sourced Caragnandi, it's an Indian name, apparently, Caragnandi Water Authority, KWA, we'll call it that. The switch was approved by the Flint emergency manager. The Detroit Water and Sewer District strongly opposed Flint being allowed to join KWA and released a document accusing Flint of starting a water war. And then between 2011 and 2015, Flint was in receivership with the city finances controlled by a series of 4 emergency managers appointed by Governor Snyder. In 2014, the DWSD, the Detroit Water Source, sent out a press release demanding the state should block Flint's request that it would hurt Detroit water and start a water war, that any claim that it would save cash-strapped city money is specious. The release also put out several options for Flint, including sale of raw untreated water and other options that could be negotiated through the media. On April 15th, the state treasury gave approval to enter into a water purchase with KWA. That project had not been completed yet and not been treated properly. It switched over to the Flint River water, which is actually needs to be treated before it enters into the system. In March 2015, the Flint City Council voted to do all things necessary to return to purchasing water from Detroit and Water Sewage Department after they found out that there was high level of lead in very, very high levels of lead in a lot of the pipes of Flint residents. Because the water from the Flint River has a lower pH and a higher salinity, causing the protective oxide and phosphate coatings on the lead surfaces to erode, exposing bare metal. In October 2015, the water supply was switched back to the Detroit water, the cleaner water, or the better water. Flint started adding additional orthanophosphate to the Detroit water in December 2015 to facilitate the buildup of phosphate scale that had eroded from using the high or low pH, high salinity Flint River water. On October 8th, Governor Snyder asked the Michigan legislature to contribute $6 million and $12 million, respectively, to the cost of returning to Lake Huron water, and also to contribute to filters for the residents. That's how it all started in Flint. At this point, we're well into 2016, and what has been done there is as far as getting clean water directly through the pipes to the residents, is not doing so well. Friday of last week, the mayor of Flint, Michigan, as well as HHS folks and EPA folks had a press conference warning all the residents of Flint, Michigan that the filters that had been provided by the National Guard and by the city quite possibly could not be taking out all the lead contaminants from their water due to higher levels of lead in it. After they had treated it and switched back to the cleaner water, there's still high levels of lead. So that's where we're at, Nancy. That's kind of the back way to go about it. It's terrible because lead is a neurotoxin. It's a heavy metal neurotoxin that especially affects small children and affects their development. So once they take it into their body, it's done. They have it. So.
Yeah, and it tears down it kills the brain, lowers the IQ, and kills the nerves, and the damage that is done is permanent. In other words, children that have been affected, it used to be lead-heavy paint that was banned from being used. You used to have, apparently it made very durable paint, and they had a lot of lead, and then children would eat paint chips, and oh dear, there we'd be. So there's permanent damage to some children. Now the horror of this is that lead pipes were so commonly used in the past, very durable metal, and you could go in, like I made sure that all the plumbing in my house was replaced when I moved into this more than 100-year-old house that my grandfather built, because it's sneaky, and lead pipes, that's one way to get lead into your water. And what are you going to do in these old cities? These are all old houses. The areas where poor people live, they're where they're migrated or pushed or however you want to explain it, are not the new houses. They are the old houses, crumbling infrastructure, and it all has lead piping, and it's a horror. Well, so what are you going to do? Well, of course, we could say everybody has to distill their water or drink bottled water or whatever, and that is the short-term solution. For heaven's sakes, if you're going to drink it, or cook in it, like make soup out of it or something like that, it should be clean. Who cares what you wash in? Who cares what you put your Tide in and wash your clothes in or take a shower or a bath? Just don't drink it. So there are solutions that should be instituted, but it's a huge problem, not just because of cataclysms, but because of the infrastructure in our cities, and people they get overwhelmed. If there's earthquakes or anything like that where they're very distracted, you will forget to attend to these things. You will forget. And lead poisoning can sneak up on you. The way the Zetas put it, you find yourself dropping things and stumbling around, because your nerves just aren't working right. And there you are. You have lead poisoning, so... chelation is something that you should be familiar with. Not just it starts with a C, CHEL, I think, and it's get familiar with this. You should have like a survival sheet. You distill your water, chelation plants. This can be done in the hospital. I mean, they go at it. They hook you up with IV and et cetera. But if you're in a survival camp and you can't, the grid is down, and forget about picking up the phone and calling emergency services. It's you and Ma Nature, and that's how you don't have to have vitamin deficiencies. You don't have to have lead poisoning. You can be perfectly healthy, as they say, naked and afraid, in the suburbs, in the city, or out in the woods. If you know what you're doing, and that list of things to do probably runs 2 pages. We're not talking about an encyclopedia here. Not much,
Basic. And,
basic
the
stuff.
three-legged stool, of survival. We talk about the three-legged stool of survival. It's water, food, and shelter security, and water is the big one. You can go for quite some time longer without food, but without water, and then to make sure that don't just grab the first tap or bottled water that you can find out there. Some of the things that are happening in Flint, or it's not only happening in Flint, but there's 26 other townships or municipalities in Michigan proper that are having as bad or worse levels of contamination, not necessarily with lead, mind you, but with other chemicals and other problems. This is not, contained to just Flint, Michigan, but it's being exposed as a problem. Like, what happens when the government wants to save money and they make a decision that down the road affects 100,000 residents of a town? Now what? Okay, now we can point fingers on the television, on the internet all day long, and poor me, poor you. But at the end of the day, what's going on with these folks? They're going to need complete overhaul of infrastructure. What if this happens after a major New Madrid earthquake, or after the power goes out for an extended period of time? How fast do you think these things are going to be happening for you? You have to be in charge of. You have to be in charge of your own survival, and part of that survival is having a plan for this sort of thing. So there are some ways to distill water, Nancy, and we've talked about this on another show. We'll just flesh out a couple of them here. To distill water without electricity or power, you can do it with the sun. One of the pictures that we have on the show site, and it's going to be on the subsequent YouTube video, shows heating water or let water sitting out in the sun to evaporate onto another, either a window or a sheet of plastic. It will condense on there and then roll into, you have it tilted slightly, you have the plastic tilted slightly, so that the water droplets will roll into a separate container, and that is a no power, well, you have to have sun, no power way to distill water. What are some other examples that, I know we've talked about this.
You can harvest the fog. That's something that was described where people who do not have a water source, they live in desert areas, but it's along perhaps the seashore or something where there is fog coming in, and they have, like you said, a tarp at an angle. The fog hits that, condenses, rolls down, and at the very bottom, at the base, then you collect that water. That's a way of getting drinking water, but it also is not full of heavy metal pollutions or parasites or bacteria, anything that you might find, in ponds and creeks. When you mention you have to have the sun, but even if the sun is not out, there is a heat coming, from the sun. You've heard of solar tea. Put a tea bag in a bottle of water, put it in the sun, and pretty soon there you are with tea, and you didn't have to heat it up. But if you have something that will burn, like you've got a fire going by whatever means, and if you don't have wood, you can burn dried cow turd or whatever, I guess. Some people do that. And the technique that someone on the West Coast developed, and it's within my website in the Troubled Times archives for safe water, called the two-pot solution. The bottom pot boils, and then you have another pot on top of it, which is cold water, and as the steam from the bottom pot hits the base of the cold pot, it condenses, distills, and rolls off to the side where you catch it. Of course, you have to have kind of like a little pan thing, there, but and the diagram, and we used that. He sent me what he had developed, and I had it in the house, and we had some big batteries that needed to have distilled water, and we didn't want to go, it was just not feasible to go shopping at that time. So I said, what the heck, let's try this out. Well, we pretty soon had 6 gallons of distilled water in a shake, from that. It works. And what's more, when you're done with all that, the top pot is warm water, good for washing, or whatever, and drink your distilled water, and you got hot water for washing. And these are pots that you can fold into each other, put in your backpack, or tie onto the top if you happen to be migrating and on the trail. So there's lots of different techniques. One thing I wanted to bring up was filters, because people will often say, well, there's filters.
Right. Well, I have a filter.
Yes, bottled water. I have bottled water. Well, you run out of that pretty quick, And then they say, well, there's filters, or you put a little bit of chlorine bleach in the water and it kills the bacteria or the germs. Well, yes, but that doesn't get rid of the heavy metals. And boiling for distillation does. And then there may be filters to get rid of heavy metals, and who knows, but you'll run out of those.
That's another example,
what?
too.
Yeah.
It's another example of, a lot of folks look at preparedness or prepping, I guess was a term that was used for a while, and then look at preparedness of, I'll just buy a bunch of filters and some bottled water and some ammunition and some dried beans and rice, and I'm done. And put it in the closet in the storage area, and we're done. This is something you have to practice and get used to doing, like with gardening or anything else. You need to practice it before you need the skill, and that's why we're putting this information out too. It's not just Flint, Michigan. It could happen to you, and you'll know for sure when it does happen to you, because the lights will be out and you'll be out of water, or something will bad have happened to you, and then you'll need these skills. Another great way was, speaking of filters too, Nancy, is like the thing that came out last week about Flint. Not to beat a dead horse on this one, but the filters that were being provided, the zero water filters. I saw some of the brands of the ones you see on television. The pitcher filters and the things you screw onto the tap that are supposed to clean out 99.99% of whatever. Well, after a certain point of contamination, especially with heavy metal, after 100 to 150 parts per billion of lead, these filters they can't pull out any more lead. So they had to backtrack. The city officials, the EPA and the HHS had to backtrack last Friday and tell everybody, okay, those filters we gave you, in some houses, the amount of lead in the water is too much for those filters to pull out everything there. So you need to have your water tested and bring it down to the fire station, and they'll send it out to test it and then send it back to you, the results. It's so backwards. There's people that have been dealing with this for a year, Nancy. A year.
Yeah. And that testing takes time. This is an invisible killer. And they show the pictures of bottled water from Flint, and it looks like a muddy orange, that type of thing. But in the main, if you have a heavy metal contamination in your, you don't see it. It's like mercury in fish is another one. They say, catch a fish in the Great Lakes, only have one per week because there's mercury poisoning. It's a very serious problem. As far as I know, bugs don't have that, and bugs are good nutrition, but fish is excellent nutrition too. It's a worry. It's very worrisome. Yes. Yeah.
And it's not going to take care of itself. Nothing in this world does take care of itself. By the way, we have to take care of us.
That's right. I think having a varied diet is the solution there. Instead of just people get into trouble if they. I saw, because the other day we were talking about vitamin deficiencies and scurvy, and how, and how you don't have to have that because there's so many weeds that are high in vitamin C and unusual sources that you didn't even realize had vitamin C, etc. And how even the Eskimos get along and they don't even have. Well, they've never seen an orange, most of them, at least in the old days. So there was an article about a child that had scurvy, and it was a child that was given as a milk substitute. I think it was almond milk or something like that, and it was so tasty, and it loved it. And it just, all that's, give me more milk. And the parents thought, well, this is wonderful. But what was lacking was vitamin C for whatever reason. And the child developed scurvy. And then we're talking about a middle-class household where they thought they were, it's like eating white rice or corn and getting some of these B vitamin deficiencies because they think, they're eating the best of the best. So having a varied diet is a solution, in some of those situations.
Exactly. Varied diet and a way to produce it yourself. So either have it in the wild around you, or have a garden or a container garden or some. Always remember too that in the preparedness field, it's better to be ready before you need to be ready. So then now is the time to be saving seeds from your heirloom varieties of when you're growing through your season. Let a bunch of plants go to seed. Let them seed out and save those seeds, or find a way to share seeds with your neighbors, or
Right.
It's another great way to meet people.
Exactly. And if you don't have a garden, I always say next time you get acorn squash or pumpkin, don't toss those seeds. Save them, because there's nothing like some of the high in vitamin A, high in calories, and keeps through the winter, in a cool place beautifully. Same with tomatoes. Very all around kind of plant, and and just ripen it in a window, and when it's plenty ripe, shuck those seeds, wash them, let them molder until there's white mold on top of them in a little water. Rinse that off, bag it up, and you will not regret having tomato seeds. That lasts 4 to 10 years. I still have viable tomato seeds from the year 2000, and I use that technique. Yeah.
I had a friend send me an article the other day about an Indian clay pot, Native American clay pot that was dug up in the Southwest that was reportedly, 800-900 years old. Inside the clay pot was beautiful squash seeds, extinct varieties of squash seeds. I'm like, I want to grow those. They might not work, but 800 years in a clay pot might be on the longer end of the shelf life, I think, maybe. Yeah. But they have. That's
right. Grown things out from 2,000-year-old seed. It does happen. It does